right, so welcome to the Cybersecurity Defenders podcast. I'm Chris Luft. I'm here with Matt Bromley. All of this brought to you by LimaCharlie, the maker of the SecOps Cloud platform. We're freestyling things these days, so hopefully everybody likes the format. I think we're doing some good here. So
I think so, Chris. We always have pretty good conversations. And to be fair to everyone out there, we usually actually just kind of freestyle our way through it anyways. I mean, there's a base template of what we want to read and cover, but all the comments and commentary and back and forth are just me and Chris. You know, when we talk about the weather or we go off of the rails about how we feel about bad guys getting charged and arrested, that's all pure us.
Yeah, we got some interesting stuff today. The first one, CVE with a perfect score of 10. So Cisco has disclosed a critical vulnerability with a perfect score of 10 affecting its identity service engine and the identity service engine passive identity connector. This flaw allows unauthenticated remote attackers to execute arbitrary code as root on affected systems. Notably, the attack vector requires no valid credentials and is fully remote. The core issue lies in the insufficient validation of user-supplied input in a specific API exposed by the affected products. By submitting a specially crafted API request, the remote attacker could trigger the vulnerability and gain root-level access to the underlying operating system. The flaw is categorized as remotely exploitable, and while it has a moderate exploitability score of 3.9, the impact score is higher at 6.0. So this is something, and I hate to admit, I did not know about the CVE scoring system today.
Yeah.
That score of 10 we gave at the beginning is actually the combination of these two subscores.
It is.
So you can get different ratios, but the total risk adds up to 10, which is, go patch your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We've, for anyone who's curious out there, it is a 10 out of 10, which is why Chris is focusing on it, because it is a pretty big one there. However, where the score comes into play and where it becomes critical to understand, as Chris mentioned, there's an impact and an exploitability. And a lot of this dials down to how easy would someone be able to actually exploit this thing, one, and then two, what would the impact be if they were actually able to do that? So, Chris, I have a very, not very, but a slightly interesting example. Cutting someone's brake lines, right? Impact, massive. Ability to do it without getting noticed, very small, right? Very small these days, because you need like physical, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need physical access to someone's vehicle. You would need to understand which line is which. You need to be able to make a change that allows it to still run. I mean, there's so many things inside of there that the exploitability level goes lower, as opposed to, ripping off someone's side view mirror of a car, right? Exploitability, super high, really easy to do. Just boom, bump it with your elbow. Impact, very low, right?
Awesome.
So it's important understanding those two sides of it, and those all go into the final score.
A great explanation. So the ability to escalate directly to root without authentication significantly increases the risk profile of this issue, especially in enterprise environments where ICE, that is the identity service engine, is often deployed to manage network access policies and security postures. Cisco has not yet publicly detailed which exact versions are affected, even though they acknowledge that version-specific data is available internally. At this time, organizations running ICE or ICE-PIC should assume exposure and take immediate action to evaluate mitigations or apply patches once issued. Given how central ISE is to access controls in many networks, this vulnerability introduces not just the risk of system compromise, but also potential lateral movement across network segments. Attackers who gain root access on ISE devices could potentially manipulate authentication policies, inject malicious configurations, or disable monitoring features, severely undermining enterprise security frameworks. The attack does require carefully crafted requests, suggesting it's not trivial, but the lack of authentication requirements lower the bar for initial exploitation. Whew, I'm having a hard time with these acronyms today.
That's okay. That's all right. They have a hard time with them as well, I think. But I want to just zero in on exactly what you just said, right? A carefully crafted request, but it does not require authentication to get there, which makes that exploitability go higher because it lowers essentially the bar for entry. And anytime someone's ever, evaluating like, do we patch, should we patch and stuff, this is something that Chris and I have kind of, lauded for, I guess, over years now, Chris, which has been patch, right? But there is definitely a consideration to be made in just how easy is it to exploit this thing. And I think this is exactly what we're looking at here. This exploitability level is a little bit lower. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit lower. But authentication isn't needed, which raises the level. There's a lot of CVEs out there that, oh, you need to have a valid username and password first, and then you can escalate privileges. Well,
Ooh.
that's a bar, that's a hump that someone's got to get over. In this case, it's a little easier, but it's not as easy.
Yeah. So if you got some Cisco gear, go check it out and make sure you are up to date.
Yes. And one final piece of advice for anyone listening to this, if you're hearing Chris and I talk about this and you're like, I have no idea what Identity Services Engine is, but I know we use Cisco, find the answer to the second part of that quickly. Go figure out what's in your environment and know your tech stack. So when these CVEs come out, you're not waiting for the Kev to tell you what to do.
Yeah. All right. Next up, a recently updated version of the malware as a service loader Matanbuchus?
Maybe. Sure.
Matanbuchus? Yeah, Matanbuchus. Let's go with that. Is being deployed in active spear phishing campaigns that are ultimately aimed at high-value ransomware infections. The loader, which has been circulating on the dark web for about 4 years, is now on version 3.0. This latest version has been rewritten from scratch and includes advanced features to improve stealth, persistence, and evasiveness. The upgrade was described by its developer as accommodating the wishes of even the most fastidious clients, reflecting both its complexity and premier tier capabilities. This is like the Apple computers of malware, it sounds like.
Do we ever need to discuss malware with these adjectives in it? I mean, seriously, like this is a premium tier level of malware, just so you guys are aware. I mean, the article that you referenced here calls it the Rolls Royce of malware loaders. Anyways, I'll let you keep going. But
Morphosec researchers have tracked campaigns dating back to at least September 2024 in which attackers used social engineering, particularly impersonating internal IT support staff, to convince employees to enable remote access via Microsoft's Quick Assist tool. One confirmed case in July of 2025 involved a hacker initiating a Microsoft Teams call, posing as a member of an organization's IT team, and persuading a user to execute a script. That action downloaded and sideloaded Matanbuchus onto the system. Once installed, the loader gathers system info, bypasses endpoint security, and deploys secondary malware, typically ransomware payloads. So I think I've said this before, but please never, ever copy and paste some code into a terminal if you don't understand exactly what it does, because that's not good.
I thought you were going to say don't ever use Teams, but no, your advice was much better. Just joking. There's lots of folks out there who use Teams. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just being facetious here. But to Chris's point, if you ever do encounter someone reaching out to you via a chat application or something, please don't take scripts from them and just run them blindly. However, Chris, I would slightly argue that I don't think the social engineering work here was so successful because they had the Rolls Royce of malware loaders in their back pocket. I think they were just really good at social engineering. But once installed, the Rolls Royce of malware loaders here, I just can't get over this Middle Eastern satanic reference name of a piece of malware. The picture that's in the accompanying article here is literally like a medieval 2D drawing of Satan at a priest table. And I'm like, this is how we're naming malware loaders these days. But I mean, you and I are trying to get past like Fuzzy Otter and you know, Big Panda and stuff like that. And here we are with Matanbuchus. But anyways.
So, sounds like these researchers might have a Sunday night Dungeons and Dragons group, is my guess.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Blue teamers out there. Chris is going to talk about some of the charges and things that come out of this. However, blue teamers out there, this is a very valuable article, I think, to read just because it gives you a really good insight into how much stuff malware authors are packing into pieces of malware these days. You know, I often akin this, and everyone's obviously hopefully familiar with like Metasploit and Kali and kind of downloading these, you know, free and open source distros that are just loaded to the brim with open source tools. Well, that's really just running through a scripted install list. Like just install this stuff, right? Maybe some of it ties together, maybe some of it doesn't. Who knows? We're just going to install it all. That's what a lot of those free open source security VMs look like. In this case, the threat actor has actually, or I should say the malware author, has actually gone back to the drawing board and has completely redone all of this, rewriting it from scratch, as Chris mentioned, but making sure all these parts work together. And it's got extremely good evasive technology built into it. Chris, you're going to cover some of these in just a moment. But, you know, it's a very novel, very well-written piece of malware. Again, I don't like to give compliments to this stuff, but if you find this in your environment, I'm hoping, you know, you've got good detections in place. It's likely going to evade on initial install and some system calls. It's going to be a latter stage detection. It's going to find this thing, especially if ransomware is the eventual payload. So shore up those environments. But Chris, I know you've got some insight into like what they're charging for it and what it can do.
Yeah. So the loader's pricing reflects its intended use in targeted high-value campaigns. The base version, which communicates with command and control servers over HTTPS, goes for $10,000 per month. A more expensive variant at $15,000 a month uses DNS-based C2 traffic, making it more difficult to detect and block due to how DNS is typically treated in enterprise networks. That variant is better suited for stealthy command level control rather than transferring large payloads. Both versions hide their traffic by mimicking the Skype desktop app and use indirect techniques to set up scheduled tasks, which make them harder to detect. Under the hood, Matanbuchus 3.0 supports various in-memory execution techniques and can run commands through PowerShell, WQL queries, and standard command prompts. It begins by identifying endpoint protection tools such as those from Microsoft, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, and several others. This reconnaissance step is essential. It allows attackers to tune the later stages of their malware deployment to avoid triggering defenses. The malware further enhances its stealth through the use of direct system calls, including a Heaven's Gate style technique to avoid EDR hooks and incorporate dynamic obfuscation to dodge signature-based detection. These features indicate that the loader is designed specifically for attackers who are targeting hardened, well-defined, defended environments. So something that caught my attention there is Heaven's Gate style technique to avoid EDR hooks. Does that mean anything to you, Matt? Because that sounds
Heaven's
pretty
Gate.
ominous.
Yeah. Heaven's Gate enables 64-bit code to run within a 32-bit process.
Oh,
And I'm racking my brain a little bit here, only because I researched it when we first came out, and then I'm like, maybe I should just look it up really quick as we talk through it. But yeah, long story short, it's a feature in an operating system, and now I'm reading my notes. Allows a feature in OS that allows the transition from 32-bit mode to 64-bit mode during execution.
huh.
Malware evades detection if the EDR or whatever the software tool is and security software tool is in place is designed only to monitor 32-bit processes. So it's kind of a way, Chris, to it's another evasion technique, if you will. I don't think we see it in every piece of malware we talk about, and it for sure is something that probably took a little bit of work to get it in there. And reading through another blog post in here, Heaven's Gate, again, that's what I was looking for. The Windows on Windows 64. So the WoW 64 subsystem refers to transitioning from 32-bit code running in a 64-bit process to 64-bit code. So really has to do with the bitness of what's being run, A, B, what the security software might be paying attention to. And then if it's also paying attention to that particular transition that took place, usually ends up being a pretty gray area for tools to pay attention to, and also ends up having a lot of permissive actions in the operating system perspective. So what I'm getting at here is it's a lot harder to lock down. And I think adversaries have figured out like, hey, we found kind of a little bit of a blind spot from a security tool perspective, and we're going to execute and run code in that blind spot, hoping to evade detection.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, this next one is the mother of all law enforcement actions. I kind of couldn't believe the numbers here. Cambodia has announced the arrest of over 1,000 individuals this week as part of a nationwide crackdown on cybercrime networks operating within its borders. The effort follows a direct order from Prime Minister Hunt Manet, who called for urgent action to safeguard national security and public order, citing the escalating threat of cyber scams. His directive explicitly acknowledged that foreign criminal groups have entrenched themselves in Cambodia, using the country as a base for online fraud schemes. The operation spans at least 5 provinces and has involved sweeping raids coordinated by police and government agencies. The bulk of arrests have occurred in urban hubs like on Phnom Penh and Sihon Oakville, sorry guys, with the latter long suspected of harboring scam operations linked to organized crime groups. Authorities detained more than 200 Vietnamese nationals, 27 Chinese, 75 Taiwanese, and 85 Cambodians in these cities. Police also confiscated large volumes of equipment, including computers and hundreds of mobile phones, which are likely critical infrastructure in ongoing cybercrime activities. In Phuket, a town near the Thai border notorious for illicit gambling and scam centers, another 270 Indonesians were arrested in a single day. That group included 45 women. Meanwhile, operations in Kratie province led to the arrest of 312 suspects from countries including Thailand, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Man, it's hard not to think that with that big of an operation, there's a few people in there that just like had very little or nothing to do with what was going on in it.
Yeah, like one of them might have been a cook, you know?
Yeah,
like,
or just
hey, I'm going to hire you
visiting
to...
their buddy.
So quick anecdote, Chris. I was once involved in I assisted a law enforcement takedown of someone who had committed some financial fraud, and he was in a house with a bunch of people. and one of the people in the house was the Uber driver that they had hired for the week.
Oh, no.
And this guy woke up to a law enforcement raid, and I don't think that's what he signed up for
Yeah.
whatsoever. But nonetheless, really interesting perspective here. I think this ties into an article that we discussed maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, where we were there was a gambling ring. I think there was a top floor of a hotel in Thailand. I think where a bunch of various Chinese nationals, part of kind of an ongoing cybercrime thing, were running gambling operations, but also were like dipping into the back to kick off ransomware campaigns and stuff like that. You know, like, hey guys, deal me out the next round. I got to go run some ransomware or something like that. But this, I think, ties into a lot of like really Southeast Asian cybercrime crackdowns by recognizing that they exist in very concentrated areas. And what I mean by that is there's not like towns that are suspicious of this. Of course, that's the case. However, just kind of reading through this here, right? Phuket, a town on the border with Thailand, notorious for cyber scam and gambling operations. You know, these individuals have figured out, hey, there's a lot of like-minded people here. Police usually look the wrong way or look the other way and the wrong way. And it's really easy for us to kind of get a coordinated operation in here. Something else for folks out there to realize, if you're not aware of this, a lot of the scamming based operations, like call center based stuff or cyber scams, online gambling, things like that, where there's like a kind of a direct flow of or direct theft of money, they typically happen in very concentrated packs. If you can also think back to kind of like the India's call centers that are very well publicized on YouTube and stuff, they're buildings. They're buildings with floors of scam centers and that kind of stuff. And the reason for that is you have like a kind of a head figure who ends up, you know, having like an army of people calling continuously and whatnot. And that's how the operation works. So they're in a very contained area. There's not really much remote work. And then the flip side of that is these threat actors aren't, you know, a couple of guys somewhere in a garage just trying to start something up, right? Whereas you might be a malware author and you live in a non-extradition country in a very secretive location because what you're doing has a very direct impact. These tend to be a lot more populous. So when these police takedowns happen, it's a lot easy to read articles like this. 270 people, 1,000 suspects in 5 raids. I mean, just crazy numbers, but hopefully makes a dent.
And really not the brains of the operation. These are probably lower level actors that are just getting swept up. Yeah.
The real boss is on a yacht somewhere.
Driving a camouflage Lamborghini somewhere.
Well, yeah, something like that. Or, you know, opening another scam center because they know this takedown's about to happen. Cybercrime world's an interesting one. It operates a lot like organized crime.
So the Cambodian government's move comes under increasing international scrutiny, particularly following a detailed Amnesty International investigation. That report, released last month, accused the government of ignoring widespread human rights violations linked to cybercrime. Amnesty's findings suggest complicity at various levels of the state, with over 50 scamming compounds allegedly operating across the country, many under the control of Chinese criminal groups. Victims, many of whom were trafficked under false promises of legitimate work, report conditions consistent with forced labor and captivity. Amnesty's Secretary General described the situation as a living nightmare where individuals are coerced into criminal work under physical threat and psychological duress. This internal crackdown also unfolds amid growing diplomatic tensions with Thailand. A broad dispute that escalated into an armed skirmish in May has since devolved into tit-for-tat measures, including Thailand's move to cut off electricity supplies to Phuket. Thailand claims this was a legitimate measure to disrupt cybercriminal activity in the area, while Cambodia accuses its neighbor of using infrastructure controls as leverage in the territorial standoff. These deteriorating bilateral relations are now overlapping with joint concerns over cross-border cybercrime, though the politicization of the issue is likely to complicate any coordinated regional response. This is crazy. This reminds me of like a sci-fi novel, you know, like
a little bit, right?
This turning off the power, like big kinetic actions from cyber tit for tat operations. Yep. It's
it's pretty wild. It feels a little bit like I akin this when I read through this the first time to kind of like those space sci-fi things you read about, where it's like a bunch of outlaw gangs running corners of the galaxy, or I guess maybe street gangs running their own blocks and stuff like that, right? There's kind of this inherent control, but also everyone knows it's bad stuff that happens there. But yeah, even more interesting, perhaps, as you mentioned kind of towards the end there, a border dispute, diplomatic tensions, and this is one of those geopolitical things that probably rises above what we know on a daily basis. But like, okay, fine, you want to fight? Let's fight. I'm going to take down your cybercrime ring. And I'm like, how does like, okay, thank you. Like, how, all right. Thank you so much for eliminating crime being purported by my citizens. Chris, here's what I really think is happening. They're disrupting flows of money,
Yeah,
as we always see whenever we
hit
see
them
like
where
a
it
town
hurts.
or a city. Yeah, where it's rampant with cybercrime, there's usually a lot of kickbacks for local authorities and stuff like that. And again, like, as you mentioned and kind of quoting your words here, Cambodia is accusing Thailand of using infrastructure controls as leverage in the territorial standoff. And this is like the games that they play. It's funny to think that these scam centers are getting caught in the crosshairs.
Well, thank goodness we don't have any criminals in government in this part of the world, right?
No, 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 not at all. That would never happen in between the Atlantic and the Pacific.
So last one I got for us today, a threat actor linked to the Abyss ransomware campaign tracked as UNC6148 by Google's Threat Intelligence Group appears to be exploiting a zero-day vulnerability in SonicWall's end-of-life Secure Mobile Access or SMA 100 series devices. The attackers are deploying a newly identified user mode rootkit backdoor dubbed Overstep, which enables persistent access, evasion, and credential theft on compromised systems. Although the specific zero-day used hasn't been confirmed, attackers are leveraging previously stolen local admin credentials and one-time password seeds, potentially harvested during earlier intrusions or through other vulnerabilities in SonicWall products. The Overstep malware modifies the appliance's boot process and loads into every running process by hijacking the system's dynamic linker configuration, ensuring deep persistence. It intercepts several Linux systems functions to hide its presence and facilitate secure communication with the attacker's infrastructure. Once deployed, Overstep allows adversaries to conduct stealthy reconnaissance, modify access policies offline, and maintain long-term control over the target device. Google's Threat Intelligence Group analysis indicates that this campaign has likely been active since October 2024, focusing on data theft and extortion, with ransomware deployment as a final step. I found this one interesting because, like, they don't know how they're getting these credentials. Like, they're like, maybe they got them before, but we actually can't say.
Yeah, Chris, this is another one where I'm always a little curious about kind of what that stage looks like, previously stolen credentials, there's a chance that they're getting them from like an initial access broker or something like that. That's obviously option one, if you will. I think there's another one, and I hate to say it, like sometimes there's hard-coded credentials, and then in other cases, it's just successful credential stuffing.
Yeah.
I think in some cases where, and this is like the worst as an incident responder or as a SOC analyst, when it feels like an attacker isn't showing up in your environment for the first time, but it feels like they're just kind of coming home, for lack of a better term, because they show up with previously existing known credentials. It makes you wonder, like, wait, is this the first time they've been here, the second time? And it might be the second time. Not every remediation and password reset does exactly what it's supposed to do. That happens, one. Two, you might also, be in a situation where, as I mentioned, you've got, a vulnerability somewhere else. And Chris, you mentioned this one here. There might be a vulnerability somewhere else or a password stolen over here that work over there. And sometimes it might just be a credential leak and you get lucky. Folks create this credential reuse is a continuing ongoing issue. I make an account over there. I use that password. An adversary buys that credential dump. They see my email over there. They take a wild guess, or I have an easily predictable algorithm, and boom, next thing you know, they're in. They look like me.
Oh, I'm tired of having that conversation with my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise. I think most of us are. But the flip side of it is, what are we really asking? And we can discuss this on another episode, but
Yeah.
like, what are we asking people to do? Like, memorize all these passwords? No, use a password manager. Okay. Well, my eldest is just learning how to use technology and passwords. And I don't know, maybe the first lesson I teach her should be, this is a password manager and this is how you use it. Maybe that's the first thing I should teach her.
Or the little UB keys. It's like a
or
key
we
for
get
a car.
away from passwords. Yes,
Yeah.
passwordless authentication.
There we go.
Please. I would love to see that.
All right. One of the more concerning aspects is that this campaign targets fully patched devices that are end of life, meaning no further updates are expected from the vendor. These applications are still present in many environments as remote access gateways, making them valuable targets. Google's Threat Intelligence Group cited several historical vulnerabilities in the SMA 100 series devices. It lists a whole bunch of CVEs, which may be reused or chained in unknown ways to establish initial access. They emphasize that even patched appliances might still be vulnerable if credentials were harvested during prior exploitation campaigns. Google Threat Intelligence Group's forensic analysis of a June 2025 intrusion into an SMA 200 appliance showed the use of previously acquired credentials to establish an SSL VPN session, followed by a reverse shell deployment. From there, attackers exported the configuration settings, modified them offline to include new access policies for persistent access, and deployed Overstep. Researchers believe that the malware has only been used by UNC6148, and there are no public samples available, which suggests it is likely a bespoke tool reserved for targeted campaigns. Organizations using SMA 100 series devices are advised to conduct forensic reviews, inspect for signs of compromise, and rotate all credentials regardless of current patch levels. Kind of smells like it could be APT-style espionage. I'm not sure.
Could be. Definitely possible. I mean, when you hear about this much kind of cloak and dagger stuff, right? No publicly available samples, previously harvested credentials, bespoke tool, targeted campaigns, very, very specific tech stack and whatnot, could definitely go that way. I don't know. I think this is one that we haven't seen the end of, Chris. Yeah. I think even though this was Google's Threat Intelligence Group tracking UNC6148, which for anyone curious out there is also, I believe, legacy Mandiant, now converted into Google's Threat Intelligence Group, or GITG. This is not probably the last we're going to hear of them. I think we're going to continue to see more from this threat actor as time goes on. Again, Overstep, this particular piece of malware here, this rootkit backdoor named Overstep, persistent access, evasion, credential theft, looking a little bit further down in the research, allows adversaries to conduct stealthy reconnaissance, modify policies. I think we're going to see this again. I think this is going to pop up again, but I'm with you. It does kind of feel and smell a lot like a state nexus threat actor.
Yeah. Awesome, Matt. We're at the end of another one. I don't even know the number. I think we're almost at 230, which is, my mind's blown every time I look at that list of episodes.
It's awesome. I always enjoy logging in because that number keeps going up, and I love having these conversations with you, Chris. Thanks for being here with me.
Yeah, same to you, sir. Take care.
All right, see ya.